Going live. All right, so we're still holding by the question of why the mitzvah of the Ir Miklat was sort of chosen and singled out by God and the Rambam to be where we learn the concept of Mashiach is a necessity inside of the fulfillment of mitzvahs. In other words, unless Mashiach comes, we can't fulfill the mitzvahs in full. And we learn that specifically from this mitzvah, which is strange. Why that one? And why we even need 3 extra cities of refuge in the future when there's not going to be even a need for the first 6 that we have, because there's not going to be any more evil in the world. And we said, in order to understand this, we have to first look at another concept in Torah. That in general, there's 2 parts of Torah. And we said, in general, this is really the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. Torah is sort of Hashem's wisdom, which is not per se about this world. It's just that he happened to have given it to us as a kindness. And then mitzvahs are dedicated from godliness to be for this world. Their interest is this world, and they're all about elevating the tachton. Torah existed before the world, and even if the world never would have come into existence, chas v'shalom, there could have been a Torah. Hashem's mind, like the brilliance of mind of God on his own. What's that? I'm saying, in theory, they could have existed in some kind of primordial plane. They're not really necessarily only people. They're chesed, gevurah, tiferes. They're just basically the wisdom of God. It could go infinitely. In other words, the fact that the Torah existed before the world shows you that the Torah is not necessarily for the world, right? It's just that Hashem let us in on his secret. He wanted the world to experience something beyond the world. But the mitzvahs are literally for the world. What does it mean to command someone to do something unless there's someone there and it's for them? So fine. So there's kind of 2 aspects. But we said if you just take this whole conversation and go into Torah itself, there's mitzvahs and there's Torah. But even in Torah, there's 2 aspects of Torah, like we said yesterday. There's the Torah which you could just sort of learn, not lamaisa. You're just learning for learning's sake. And there's Torah lamaisa, where you're basically learning. You're still not in the mitzvah. You're in the realm of Torah, but you're learning to do, right? And then even in learning's sake, for learning, there's still 2 levels. And we said that's the idea of the difference between learning Kabbalah and mysticism and learning Nigla. Even though in Nigla, you're just learning the Kabbalah Schar, Drush and Kabbalah Schar. In other words, you're not learning Lamaisa, but you're still you're still learning about the world. The whole topic is about the world. Whereas when you go into the mysticism and the Nister, it's really like Hashem's private business, because it's not even it's not talking about God as he is before the world, amongst other things. So that's really this sort of premium level of Torah for its own sake is really mysticism. So we said the difference between these 2 types of Torah is emphasized in the difference between Torah in Bizman Hazeh and Torah in the days of Mashiach. And we said, Bizman Hazeh, the Iker Avoda, since we're still busy fixing the world and making refinement of the world, therefore the main Torah that we have to be involved in. And for that matter, really, mitzvahs is the key, right? Because we're trying to refine the world. And even in Torah, those aspects of Torah which are designed to refine the world, that's our main business, right? And the parts of the Torah that are sort of mystical and beyond this world, we only need a little bit of them in order to infuse our work in the world. But in the time of Mashiach, it's going to flip. And that's where we left off. Top of column 2 on page 186. Yeah?
When we're saying mitzvahs are like the lowest, the more passionate aspect of Torah, like why does that not also, like when we say Avraham Avinu would do the mitzvahs like in a primordial state as well?
Okay, but still, even when he was doing the mitzvah in a primordial state, he was trying to make an impact on the world. Otherwise, he would just be learning Torah in a primordial state. Even though he didn't actually, like you could say the same thing about the Rabbi. In other words, he did all the mitzvahs in the cave. So he didn't actually have a physical mitzvah, but he was doing mitzvahs in the cave and he was learning Torah in the cave. There's still a difference between his interest in refining the world, whatever it looks like to make a spiritual mitzvah, if you don't happen to have a physical one. Not that we can do that, but the Rabbi, let's say, could do it. Avraham Avinu, before the Torah was given, could do that. It's still directed towards the refinement of the world, right? It's like a different approach. What are you doing? One is I'm just swimming in the garden of Hashem's wisdom. I have nothing to do with this world. And one is I'm busy fixing something. So, yeah?
Okay, but how can we be fixing this world if it's not involving any material aspect? why are we still calling that a mitzvah?
How could the Rashbi do mitzvahs while in the cave and do the mitzvah of sukkah and do the mitzvah of tefillin and all these things? Because he was refining the world. He was doing the same thing that you do when you do a mitzvah. He was able to do it mystically. But again, his business as attention was attached to refining the world. It's it's sort of like, for example, I just saw a video on energy healing, right? What are you doing already, right? You're just like sitting there like blinking your eyes and waving your hands, but the guy's fixed, right? You're busy with that. So even though you're going to do it in some kind of a mystical way, business is refining the world, healing the person, right? You're still attention on something practical. Masha'im came b'yemos Mashiach. Not so in the days of Mashiach. Top of the column. La'achri shleimus avodas habirurim. We'll have finished the avodas of birurim, refining, fixing the world, healing the world. Yufra rara min hatov. Is there any more copies to go around? Yoshua, you got one? Look inside with us, please. Page 186. Osios machkimos. You guys know this concept? Letters make you wise. You got to look at the letters, and it helps to internalize the information. So he says, after the shleimos avodas habirurim, once the completion of the world, fixing the world, yufra raminato, which means the evil. What does birur mean? It means putting the evil on one side and the good on the other side. Asay tov, sor meira. You're basically sorting out, literally, the world. Then, when that's finished, so the Rabbi says it is now. We'll think about that later. Lo ye'esek haTorah mitzvos levar birurim. Then our business in Torah will not be to be refining the world anymore. That's not what we're doing with the Torah. That part of the Torah has been completed. Kim liyachid yichurim el yorim yoser. We did say this. What are we doing then? We're just making higher and higher levels of unity. The world is already perfect, but it can be more and more imbued with godly revelations ad ein sof. How do you do that? By learning the parts of the Torah which are not focused on fixing. It's basically, what do we say when you climb up to the top of the Torah for like lishma, for its own sake? God, it's the Pnimiyas Torah. So therefore, we will all be through Pnimiyas Torah l'kaima mitzvahs b'kavanas elyonos. In other words, you're still going to do mitzvahs, but you're not doing mitzvahs to separate the good from the evil. You're doing mitzvahs because every time you do a mitzvah, you can imbue greater and greater levels of godliness into the world. How? Through your meditations and understanding of the secrets of the Torah in the very actions that you're doing. It's called the kavana of the mitzvah, like we spoke about actually in a mimer of Lag BaOmer, if you recall. Pinimius ha-mitzvahs v'taimehem hanistardim, which means you're doing the mitzvah but pinimius. In other words, you're getting to the sort of spiritual root that the mitzvah is really godliness and nothing else. But what? Even then, just like we said nowadays, or 1991, however you want to understand this sugya, that we were doing mostly nigla and we need a little nister, right, in order to infuse us with inspiration. Also in the future, it'll be mostly nister, but even then, we're still going to know, still going to have to know nigla, right? Like a little bit. Not a little bit, we're going to have to know all of nigla, but we're going to have to tend to the nigla a little bit. Right? Aval haniglaos yiu gluim v'yadurim l'chol ish Yisrael b'yadiyah b'techila b'li shich v'ein tzrich la'asok b'hem. This is a quote from Tanya, and it's kind of an awesome thing. He says, but how will your nigla be? And by the way, it's kind of like that already in a weird way, thanks to Rabbi Goldstein and others. But the idea is that all the revealed parts of the Torah will be openly revealed before you to every single Jew without basically having to occupy yourself in it so much. You can just Google it, right? And like all the shitas come up, all the acharonim, all the rishonim, all the dayas down to the psak din. You can get 5 different rabbanim in every city. It's amazing. Like we have this kind of going on right now that we don't have to so much. We don't have to. I'm not positing over here exactly where we're holding on the timeline, but we definitely can see an example of this, that we don't have to occupy ourselves in nigla in the same way. It's all revealed before us. Again, don't take that too far. We're still learning nigla most of the day, but maybe we shouldn't based on this, right? At some point, we're not going to be. At some point, we're going to be basically fully occupied in the Pnimiyas HaTorah, and the nigla will just sort of know from the Pnimiyas. Look, he says in footnote 89, he says, the Tanya continues to quote over there, Gam efshar v'karov hadavar sheyedu mi'apnimiyas kol gufi Torah nigla. So in other words, what he's saying is, you're going to for sure know all the nigla, but how? Because you're going to know the secrets of the Torah so well. And basically, what is the secrets of the Torah? It's essentially the nigla is glued in there. And from knowing the secrets, you're going to know exactly what to do. In other words, by seeing the elokus, you're going to know if you put on your Rabbeinu Tam with a bracha or without a bracha, and what order to put it in. You're not going to have to read the nigla to know that. You're going to know it automatically from knowing sort of that Rabbeinu Tam is chokhmah and Rashi is bina. You're going to basically see what to do practically from understanding the mystical automatically. That's what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. He says like Avram Avinu. Actually, he brings that. He says like Avram Avinu. That he knew what to do physically, so to speak, because he didn't know he wasn't given the mitzvahs yet, because he knew the mysteries of God, and it was sort of like natural. He walked in those ways automatically. That's what halacha means, right? Like walking in the ways of God. He knew the ways of God, so he walked in the right direction. And he says, we're not going to need to like be busy with them. We're going to know them automatically. Fine. That will be the switcheroo that's going to happen. In the meantime, in Gullus, we need mostly nigla and a little nister, and in the future it will be the opposite. Yud base. Yesh lomar shezeu gam tochen achiluk shebein sheish arei miklat shebizman hazeh leviyasaf lechaod shalosh arim b'yemos Mashiach. Now we're kind of getting the answer to our question. What's so key about the cities of refuge that's like the poster child for the laws of Mashiach? He says because this is the difference between the 6 cities of refuge that we have before Mashiach comes and the additional 3 that we're going to have after Mashiach comes. Meaning, why? What does that have to do with anything? Mitzvahs ir miklat kashura im tikun chet eitz hadas. First of all, let's get to the sod of the cities of refuge. What are they really about? This is a mitzvah whose function is to be a tikkun for the original sin, the sin of the tree of good and evil, which is the shoresh l'chol hachatoim, the root of all sin. Where do you see? The Midrash explains. And it's also, he brings many footnotes here of different Maimarim that you can go further elucidate yourself on this concept because it's very interesting. But what is the secret of the Ir Miklat? The Midrash says, Lama nizgaresh Adam Arishon migan eden lachar chet eitz hadas. Why was Adam Arishon banished, right, put in exile from Gan Eden after the sin of the tree of knowledge? Al shehevi misa ala doros vayachayev lamus miyad, because he basically killed everybody, right? He was a murderer of billions of people, because death wouldn't have come into the world if it wasn't for him. So he was banished from the garden because he was really obligated to die immediately. Ella, wasn't he killed immediately? Because Hashem gave him the law of an accidental murderer, right? In other words, he didn't really mean to kill billions and billions of people. He was busy just trying to do something else. So it was an unintentional murder, and therefore he was banished. What's the law of an unintentional murder? You have to be banished and go to a city of refuge. So as it turns out, the whole earth is a city of refuge, basically, for Adam Arishon, where he was banished from Gan Eden because he killed accidentally. So you can see all of a sudden, whoa, this is a serious mitzvah, right? No wonder, like the Rambam and God chose this mitzvah in order to be so central in the development of the coming of Mashiach. It's totally connected to the tikkun of the entire world. Yeah. Until the death of the Kohen Gadol. Right, so Galus is temporary. By the way, this is temporary. I don't know if you know, we're going to go back to the Garden of Eden. That's how this ends. Mamish, take of me out. Really? You're smiling like you have a question about that. No. It's definitely happening. We have it on good word. Mashiach is coming. So, right, so this is the idea that he was banished like an accidental murderer who is also sent into exile like an Ir Miklat. In further detail, why then is this then considered to be a tikkun for every single sin in the whole wide world? In other words, this is this thing that happened to him and the whole idea of the Ir Miklat, not just this amazing concept that we're seeing that Adam Arishon was considered like an accidental murderer. But we're going to see that every single person who sins is considered like an accidental murderer. And therefore, the city of refuge is really like a concept, which is the notion of rectifying all sin. Why? Let's look at it. So he says, Yedua shekol chet va'avon hu me'ein v'dugmas makan nefesh bishgaga. He says, every time you sin, it's compared to murdering someone by accident. How do you like that? You might think again. Kamosha Kasuf. Why? Because it says, Shofech dam adam ba'adam. There's a pasuk which is the Easter of murder in the Torah, basically. Right? It says you're not allowed to spill the blood of man by man. This is the word. These are the words that are used to prohibit murder in the Torah. Shu'inin shvichas dam v'chayis adam de kedusha ba'adam de klippa. But why does it say in such a kind of an interesting poetic way? Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam. Right? It's telling you something. It really says the spilling of the blood of man by man. Who are these two different men? This is the idea of the spilling of the blood and the chayas of the man of Kedusha, which is basically your nefesh elokis. He's called an Adam, by the man of Klippa, right? So whenever the man, there's two of you, right? It's two of you in there. So one of you is looking to kill the other one, right? And it's not a joke. It says that the Yetzer Hara plays many roles, right? First thing he does is he tries to tempt you to do the wrong thing. Once he tempts you to do the wrong thing, he then sits in judgment of you. After he sits in judgment of you, he's the executioner. The same Yetzer Hara that you have is literally trying to kill you. That's probably why you're having a hard time in life, right? There's someone inside of you that's trying to kill you. That's his goal. And it's called murder, right? Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam. And the idea is that you're spilling the blood. What is the blood? The life force, which needs to be contained inside the godly soul. If you poke a hole in it, the life force starts to spill out. And that's the idea of like the leakage that takes place. You only have a certain amount of energy. If you contain it inside of godliness and you're like a Rabbi going around with perfect thought, speech, and action, etc., so then your animal soul is sort of just like stuck to you and you're dragging him where you want him. If he pokes a hole in you, the life force of the godly soul drips out and animates him, and he's basically stealing your life force to go and running off and doing what this man wants to do. It's called the spilling of blood, right? That's what we call a sin. However, we're going to say that every time the animal soul does this to you, it's considered like an unintentional sin, which is like a little bit of a silver lining on this cloud. Shalom b'ratzona, which means it's not really a willful decision. Why? Because this is like the famous Rambam on Hilchos Girushin, where the Rambam says, why are you allowed to beat up the guy who's running away from giving a get until he says, I want to, when obviously his I want to is seriously under duress? The Rambam Paskins, this is halacha, because he says it's a law. It's not like wishful thinking. It's a halacha in the Rambam. That every single Jew, right, he wants to do all the mitzvahs and distance himself from all the averas. That is his true intention. And therefore, this guy, when you beat him, he says, I want to, you're not making him do something he doesn't want to do. You're revealing his true will. This is, by the way, the Rabbi speaks about this constantly, because if it wasn't for this, the whole Chassidus is in question. We're basically holding a principle that every Jew, in their essence, wants to do all the mitzvahs all the time. And that's why we go on Kiruv missions, right? And like do hafatz mayanos, because we're sure that the person that we're talking to agrees with us if we could just remove his Yetzer Hara from him.
So what about if someone doesn't want to put on tefillin?
I literally just saw the Rebbe had a whole sicha talking about forcing a person with words, right? And basically the idea of dibor can also have the same meaning. Is yadaber also means to rule over someone. Right? The word dibur can also mean to rule. It has a double meaning. And the Rebbe says that's what you're supposed to rule over another person with your dibur. Like it's not a joke. This is a real life game here. This is a little training camp to make warriors that can rule over people with their dibur. What does a melech do, really? It says that the melech rules with his speech. It's a pasuk in Tanakh, right? But devar melech shilton, right? Meaning to say, where's the melech? The melech doesn't get you to do things by knocking on your door and dragging you into the army. He puts out a decree. And like from the fear of his speech, right? You ever even met any president before? You're going to stop at the red lights because the word is out. You have to do it. You can rule with your speech. The Rebbe, what did the Rebbe do? He read from his house to 770 to the Ohel and a mikveh here and there, right? So that's his whole sivuv. And he ruled the whole world, and he's still ruling the whole world with his speech, taking over the world with speech. So yes, you are supposed to, this is what miftzoim is. And the Rebbe says, if you speak from the heart, it will enter the heart, and you can unfortunately learn the converse. If it doesn't enter the other person's heart, and you didn't rule over them, it didn't come from your heart from a good way. And therefore, you can pat yourself on the back that you went on miftzoim, and yes, you should, because kol hakavod, you tried. But if you don't succeed, try again, because you have a power of speech, and you're supposed to conquer with it. Yeah.
Can we really say that Rabbi is like really forcing anyone to do mitzvahs though there's people who still like refuse?
Well, that's why he made you as a chassid to go find those people. He's not done forcing the whole world to do mitzvahs. This is like the siman of the Melech HaMashiach. He's going to l'chofes kol ha'olam. That's how he's going to force. He is. I mean, he's busy with the job, right? You know, it says that it doesn't say we're waiting for Yom Mashiach. Right? It says we're waiting for Yamos HaMashiach, which means the days of Mashiach. Mashiach doesn't accomplish, unlike what most people have an imagination for, and we all can hope and dream, Mashiach's going to just come one day on a cloud and finish, and everything's going to be great. That's not really what happens. It's like the war in Gaza. You start off in one tunnel, then you go to the next tunnel, then you go to the next tunnel, chas v'chalil, you have some casualties in between. It's a wars of Mashiach, right? They're the wars of Mashiach. We're in them right now. We're in those days. That's exactly what's happening in our very time. So it's not done. But the point is that each soldier is very, very precious. That's what I'm saying. This is not a game. Each one of us has to go and mamish rule whatever world we can find with our speech. Here we have a bigger world because Hashem gave us tools to talk to the whole world. But you have to talk to the whole world. It doesn't happen by itself. This is the Rebbe's Shita. Nothing happens by itself. It's one by one. Each and every single Jew has to be held by the hand and brought in. So people say, that's crazy. That's never going to happen. We're a tiny group of people in a giant world. The Rebbe says, no. Let's send one to Chicago. Let's send one to Berlin. Let's send one to who? He literally, he takes this seriously. He took your life and he took you and sent you to Brazil. Say, what do I have to do with Brazil? Say, there's Jews there. Find each and every single one, Shlomo and Yankala and Yoshua and David, each one. You're not getting out of this so easily. But yes, it's happening. These are the days of Mashiach and the war is on, and it's a war of words. That's what it is. But the good news is that you're dealing with a loaded deck, because all those Jews want to do all the mitzvahs and want to stay away from all the averas. That's what they want. So you're not really convincing them of anything but to be themselves. Ella, what happens to a Jew who's fallen? Yitzro hu batikfo. This is what the Rambam says, right? His Yetzer Hara has the best of him. That's all it is. And it's kamo ones. And therefore, this is, you know what ones means? It's like someone who's in handcuffs. It's against your will. In other words, he's being, so that's what you're trying to say. Anytime a person sins, this is totally against your will. It's like someone holding a gun to your head making you sin, because it's the last thing you really want. So any sin, first of all, it's like murder, because you're spilling the blood of Kedusha and by the hands of the blood of Klippa, and it's totally accidental. On the contrary, it's more than accidental. It's literally against your will, because you want to do all the mitzvahs. It's only your Yetzer Hara is holding you captive. The actual sin only happens when you lose your das. You lost the plot, right? A guy, we have, unfortunately, even in this yeshiva, a guy can come in, he can sit down and be normal. All of a sudden, he's going to go violent and rogue and crazy. What happened, dude? Lost my das. I just lost the plot for a second. He can be realigned, what I'm saying, and get back into the das, but you sort of like an animal, you just get overtaken by a force called the Yetzer Hara. It's a Befedrus Gemara that it says a person will not perform a sin unless a spirit of folly overcomes him. Ba'od v'gam ze iker she'elokim ina liyado. And the Rebbe even sweetens the deal, and he says, and this is the main thing. What happens when you kill accidentally? There's a pasuk that says Hashem brought it to your hand. In other words, besides the fact that it was against your will, it wasn't that you're the bad guy and your Yetzer Hara got hold of you. It's like God has a plan for you. And he basically made you murder someone, and he set this whole thing up in order to give you this test and to get out of it. So in other words, it's completely out of your hands. God put you into this situation. That's what it says by an accidental murder. It says that you should send to the city of refuge because God brought this to his hand, right? Kamosh Kasu, and this is the pasuk from the Torah. We'll just end here, which proves this in a very deep and concerning biblical way. The Maggid of Mezrich, he says that Adam HaRishon, even though we can flub around with the fact that he had free choice, because we're not going to take that away, but really him doing this sin was designed before creation, and there was really no way for him to get out of it. How do we know? There's a pasuk, Noda alila al bnei Adam. It means Hashem is awesome in setting up man. Because the Maggid's vort is in the Torah, which preceded the world. It says, Adam ki yamus ba'oel. It says a person, when he dies in the tent, this will be his laws of tumah, etc. So obviously, man was going to die. There's laws of the Torah, adjudicating, it's not a word, adjudicating what happens when a man dies. So there obviously was an eventuality of a man dying. But then we say there would have been no death in the world unless Adam sinned. So we say, guess what? Adam's going to sin, which is what we're saying. Elokim ina liyado. Hashem is going to bring this to your hand. So don't get all worked up about it. It's an accidental murder. And therefore, you need a city of refuge. And you can see, therefore, why this is such a fundamental mitzvah. It ultimately is this, like the tikkun for every single sin on earth. Adam HaRishon's original sin and every single sin that happened afterwards. It's a tikkun for accidental murder, which is essentially every sin.
What if you kill someone on purpose?
It's accidental.
In the days of Mashiach, we'll have access to sin still.
That needs tomorrow's class.
This whole situation that this is doing initially, like making it initially.